Señoras y señores, con ustedes el señor Horst.
Buenas, rompí un poquito el protocolo ahorita mismo, porque a veces la bio, cuando uno la lee en frío, realmente no entiende el valor y la experiencia, el conocimiento que uno de los expositores, que el expositor que va a tener tiene, pero nosotros en Panamá nos sentimos sumamente orgullosos de tener a Scott Horst, porque esta es una presentación como muchas que hemos tenido, también la de Omid, tienen un gran valor. Scott Horst es una de las mentes, junto a Rick Federici, Mahesh, que han sido las mentes creadoras detrás de estos conceptos y de realmente llevar los sistemas de certificación de construcción sostenible al momento que han llegado. Él es el líder de la transformación de LEED hacia su nueva versión y de una mesa internacional que ha sido un éxito rotundo para expandir la certificación LEED a nivel mundial. Lo que tenemos aquí es un gran valor. Yo les pido que lo aprovechemos. Él va a hablar mucho de la filosofía detrás de estos sistemas de certificación, pero Scott Horst no solo es LEED. Scott Horst está liderizando un movimiento y una organización que va a llevar la evolución de muchos sistemas de certificación en el mundo. Así es que realmente yo quisiera recibir a Scott con un gran aplauso al tener el honor de tenerlo aquí en Panamá y agradecer nuestra invitación. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Roberto. And that's the last of the Spanish for me, I'm sorry. First, I met Roberto in 2012 when he joined the LEED International Roundtable, which is an organization that we set up to have the whole world work on a single system. And it's been wonderful having Panama GBC work with 39 other countries at this point. Can I just ask who in the room is a member or a supporter of Panama GBC? Well, congratulations, because, thank you. So, first of all, let's clap for them. I can't clap because I've got all these things here. But to me, that's very important because that's where leadership starts. I think the theme that I want to convey to you is that coming together to help other people find how to do what they want to do is what we're about and what we want to be about. I know that everybody in this room is here for a reason, and everybody in this room has something in their heart or some purpose that brought you here that makes you want to make the world a better place. So you aren't just here because of the business case, although there is the business case. You aren't just here to save energy, although of course we want to save energy. You aren't just here to save water, but of course we want to save water. You're here because there's something you deeply care about, and it's the future, it's the world. So how do we get people to change? How do we get, everyone in here knows that we can be a lot smarter. I love the ICF presentation. I love that we have bankers working in the world in an incredible way to try to change how people are thinking at all levels. How do we get people to do that everywhere? How do we shift our thinking? I find that we kind of have a paradox as environmentalists and people that care. We tend to look out. We tend to look at the object. We look at the waves in the ocean and hope they don't come up too far. But I always find it's better to look within. Start inside. Know that what you do matters. Help other people find that inside and then connect it all so you're moving in the same direction. So let me start then by giving you some thoughts about cities from some of the greatest thinkers of all time. And I think, see, when I'm saying this because when I go within, I go to thought. It's one place I go, and then I go to heart as well. But we've got heart. I want to think our advantage is we have thought. So let's start with Socrates. It's about 400 BC. And Socrates was He was part of a school that now at Harvard they teach it in the law school, the Socratic method. They don't tell you how to do something, they ask you, why did you say that? What was it about what you said that mattered? It's the questioning that leads, so the questioner is always guiding your thinking into a better place. Socrates was the one that began that thinking, or began that approach. And Socrates didn't ever write anything. Everything that Socrates wrote was written by Plato. But Socrates at the time was challenging the leaders because he had a very large group of young people that he was asking questions to, and that was a threat. So he was arrested. Do you all know this story? So he was arrested, and he was given an opportunity to leave. He was going to be put to death, essentially, and he was given an opportunity to leave. His friends came to him and said, they're going to let us escape. Let's get out of town. And Socrates said, what am I without this place? Who am I if I leave? How could I possibly leave? And if I leave, how could anyone ever else stand up for what they believe? So Socrates took hemlock and died. And he gave us our first sense of social contract. He gave us this sense that we belong someplace. It was put down in writing. It's not that it was some brand new concept, but he put it down for us, and Plato put it down for us in 300 BC so that we could understand it today. Now Plato, who was a student of Socrates, wrote something called the Republic. And he gave us this great sense of what a place means for a group of people. He really gave us our sense of justice and how we work with each other to resolve differences and come up with ways that we can move forward as a society. Aristotle, I just have to tell you one other thing about Plato. The cool thing about Plato is there are these two big differences between Plato and Aristotle. Plato believed that the forms, things like goodness or mercy or kindness, were in the sky. We think of things as Platonic now because they aren't on earth. They're someplace else. And so we participate in those things when we do something good. Aristotle, who didn't agree with Plato, but was his student, thought of it very differently. Now, the only thing I want to tell you about Aristotle is Aristotle, in a book called Nicomachean Ethics and another book called Politics, focused on describing the city. And there are two key things about what he calls the city-state that I think is so essential for us today. One is that the city-state is natural. So what he said was that the city began by people who were functioning more like animals, coming together to survive together in places, and that created a hamlet. And the hamlet grew together into larger groupings. But Aristotle has two key distinctions. One, things are done by nature or they're done by craft. So it's very important that he says that the city is natural. Because see, today I think we think all of our artificial systems that we've created all around us are things that take us away from nature. But our goal is to integrate them back into nature. That's the only way they'll really work. The other thing that Aristotle said about cities is that, and this one is probably a little controversial today, but he says that the city-state is more important than the individual. That we are always part of something bigger, and it's bigger than us. That it's something similar to what Socrates was saying. He was saying, this place matters more than me. And we matter more than I. So there's something beautiful in that I think we should consider. So I've been thinking a lot about the people that I know in my life and what it is about them that I appreciate. What is it that makes me feel good when I think about them? What is it that made, like I know several people who died, and they died well. How did they do that? How do we learn how to die well? How do we learn that our lives meant something? It's meaning. That's why we're here. Meaning, I love to think of meaning this way. Meaning is the connection of purpose, doing something. I have something I want to do, and action. So I do something about it. I have a purpose to accomplish something. I want to save energy, and then I do something about it to save energy. This is my grandfather, and when he was a young lad, and this is my grandmother when she was quite young. They were Mennonites, and their life had meaning. There was something about them that I always look to, and I'm sure we all have examples of those people in our lives. Now, let's face the reality. The world population, the year my grandfather and grandmother was born, was approximately 1.2 billion. Okay, so today, the world population in India is approximately 1.4 billion. So in 2 generations, this massive change is happening, and it's like we can't stop it. And it's just going to keep growing. It's just going to keep growing. So change is occurring. It's this machine, it's a roaring train running down the track. How do we guide it? Our job is to guide it. Our job isn't to make change happen. Our job is to adjust it so it happens in an intelligent way. That's what I love about hearing putting finance together with software packages, with all kinds of tools that allow people to move in a direction that guides change. Change gets built in a very specific way. This is Fortaleza, Brazil in 1972, and then today. This is the Bund in Shanghai, the year I graduated from college on the left, and the Bund in Shanghai today. I wish I had taken a picture of Panama City the first time I came here in 1978 as a young man, and today. It's not even recognizable. But change is small. This particular bird, I love what Brazilians call the hummingbird. It's beija-flor, flower kisser. That's just a beautiful name. But this particular bird is one of the smallest creatures that travels the furthest and has a huge ecological impact wherever it goes. It's small things that turn into big differences. Everything starts small. Little seeds, big old trees from little seeds grow is a great song I love. And this is Sao Paulo, one brick at a time. A forest, an incredible jungle, a veritable jungle. It's a natural place of bricks and mortar and change, constant change. How do we guide it? Now today we live in a very different world. Today we live in this world that's completely connected. And even though there's all this discussion today, unfortunately from my president who's talking about nationalism, we live in a world that is completely connected. If you get a chance, read the book called Connectography by Parag Khanna. He says a very interesting thing about cities as well. He says, the city is the most enduring structure of mankind. So he talks about Istanbul, and he says, it's no longer the Ottoman Empire, and it's no longer Byzantium, but Istanbul remains as this outrageously influential place of human endeavor, and it's all the people there, all doing stuff together. And what we're supposed to do, our job, is to guide them to be more intelligent about how they put their buildings and their infrastructure and their cities together. That's our job. We're just there to help them be smarter about how it all happens. So how do we tie ourselves together? How do we see? So the key isn't whether we care. The key is how do we move in a direction that is common, that helps us all be intelligent relative to where we are. That's the challenge. So clearly the next slide I have here is only a little teeny piece of it. That's a teeny little piece of it. Measurement is good because, like, think of whoever made this. I don't know what it's made out of, but it's covered with silver paint. Whoever made this used a tape measure. if he hadn't or she hadn't used the same tape measurer as the person that ended up making another one, they would be in a completely different place. One of my favorite stories is when the railroad was first being built across the United States, every town, most of them coming from European ancestry, had its own time master. So every town had a clock. And of course, they didn't run the same. So the railroad had to standardize the measurement of time in order to create a schedule. Until the railroad was, and there were huge fights about it. Like the time master said, no, sorry, you run on my schedule. I'm not changing my clock to run on your schedule. But ultimately, and we also know that smartphones completely changed how we think about time. Those of us who've been around long enough to know that, like, we used to be doing this and wondering if, wondering if it was really working. Now, I've been dedicated to this particular program as a way to tie us together. So what I want to do now is share with you some of our strategic thinking relative to LEAD, and share with you some of what we're doing with ARC and show you how it's going. So I really want to just give you a sense of how do we keep getting real and how do we keep moving collectively as a group. So this is strategic thinking. How do you get people to act? So I went to one of my first conferences I ever went to. There was a fellow from the Chattanooga Institute called David Crockett, of all names. And he said, there are two things you can do. Is this great big burly guy. And he said, there are two ways you can do it. You can do pilot projects, do really cool pilot projects. And we might be able to say that, like, Living Building Challenge is a program of pilot projects. They've got amazing pilot projects, and they show you a vision of what's possible. But there aren't that many of them. There are 100 after about 10 years. But they're really cool pilot projects. We know that if you build a new building to Living Building Challenge, it's going to be amazing, and it's going to be the potential of what's possible. And then there are programs, and programs are very different. Programs are how you put a group of people together to try to combine efforts. So LEAD was a program, and what you see here is this is code. So at the time we used to say a code building is the worst building you're allowed to build without going to jail. And then up here we've got risk takers. So the risk takers are the ones that are doing, like, Living Building Challenge, really cool, amazing stuff. And then you've got market leaders, which is 20%, and then you've got the rest of the market. So what we decided at the very beginning was to say, we're going to give recognition to the top 25% of the market and try to move the market towards them. So we aren't going to try to boil the ocean. We aren't going to try to say, let's go after everybody. We're going to say, if someone's listening to you, talk to them. Don't try to talk to somebody that's not listening. It's a waste of time. Talk to somebody that's going to listen and help them, support the leaders. That was the key fundamental strategy of LEAD at the beginning, and it has been up to today. Now, I think what we can say is that it was an incredibly successful strategy for new construction. It's been an outrageously successful strategy for Class A office buildings around the world, and I'll show you why. But then we made another key decision, a strategic decision. At the time, around 2010, there were all kinds of different rating systems around the world. So there was BREEAM in the UK, DG&B in Germany, there's Estidama, there's Pearl, there are literally scores and scores of systems. So, and they were all creating regional systems. And our challenge at the time was, how do you create a regional system when everyone looks at you as an American? Like, how can I come in, because everyone just kept saying the same thing. No one wants to do this in India because it looks like it's American. So what we did was we said, let's create one system for the whole world, and let's pull in a group called the LEAD International Roundtable, which is where Roberto got involved with us. And we got 39 countries working on a global system. I want to show you, so one other thought about that, the key thinking behind that is that instead of intelligence coming from a place, intelligence from a single place, it should come from the local place. Intelligence is always project-based. You always know your place and your project better than anybody. But we can tie it together. So what LEED did was it uses credits and people doing the same requirements to tie those ideas together, and it becomes super powerful. Let's just take one example. Low VOC paints. Almost all the manufacturers that I know that were manufacturing low VOC paints were cutting their lines of low VOC paints because they weren't working. And then they started noticing they were getting jobs all over the world because of LEED credits. They hadn't even heard of LEED. But they started getting involved with LEED because they were winning work. And that changed markets. Now almost all paints are low VOC paints. Now another example, low flow fixtures. Sorry ladies, waterless urinals. Waterless urinals were code violations in Chicago and almost everywhere in the world. At the beginning of LEED, everyone had to go fight the municipality to allow waterless urinals for all kinds of silly reasons. Now I find waterless urinals in Newark Airport, of all places. You know, airports, museums, because thousands of projects started buying the same thing and industry changed. So examples over and over of how when we function as a buying group, a block that moves the market in the same direction, we become extremely powerful. This is what happened when we created a single LEED. So what you'll see here, this is time, started at 2000. What you'll see is it's a United States program. Now, when we get up, here's 2005, when we get to 2010, you'll see the rest of the world start to use it because they no longer think it's just the US, right here. Today, that's over 100,000 projects and billions of square feet. And this is what the heat map looks like of the influence it's had. But again, the real influence, unfortunately, the real influence is in Class A office buildings in primary markets. So what we did was we created a system, and the reason LEED works is because you've got a scorecard and you've got a project team and they have to build something. And the scorecard disciplines the project team. I've worked on 100 LEED projects myself before I came to US Green Building Council and then to ARC. And what happens on every project is everybody has a platinum building on day one. And then they get to design development and they go, oh, darn. And then they get to construction documents and they go, we promised we were going to do this. So they get serious. It's discipline. It's like if you're a musician, it's like sitting in the practice room. Like LEED disciplines the project team to work together as a group. But an existing building doesn't have a project team. So what do? How do you get those people to act? I just wanted to put this in here to show you how you're doing as a country relative to LEED. So you have 113 registered projects, which puts you, I believe it's 7th in all the countries in Central and South America. 6th or 7th, I'll have to look. I'm sorry, I should have put that up here too. And you have 33 certified, but this is the very hopeful thing. This is going up. And this number, so you have 33 projects certified, but this number of 113, that's the future. I always look at registered numbers because registered numbers show what's really going to be happening. So this is our new strategy slide, and it's much more in connection with what you heard, I think, from IMF, from Ahmed, and what you'll hear from others about we have to go deeper, we have to do more. So this strategy slide shows, it's like that market bump there, but there are essentially three things. So we're saying LEED functions somewhere between business as usual and best practice. which makes sense. You could say that a LEED Platinum building is a compendium of best practice. It may not necessarily be the most amazing building in the world, but it will have done the best stuff. And the project team will have been very focused, and they will have thought about the design in an integrative fashion. But then we're saying there's also beyond. Now, if you think of that in a linear way, it's living building challenge. But if you don't think of it in a linear way, it's multidimensional. Beyond doesn't have to be just beyond like carbon zero. It can be groups of buildings, or a teeny little space, or a city, or a community. It can go in all kinds of different directions. And then there are all these buildings down here which don't have capital budgets. The ones that don't have any money to put into anything. And they're always the ones that are left behind, but they're the ones that actually, if we help them, if we lift them up, if we put a hook in them, that's where we're going to really impact climate change. Because if I've got a high-performing building and I reduce consumption by 10%, that's nothing compared to a low-performing building and reducing consumption by 10%. I just have to, how am I doing for time? I just want to make, okay. Okay, so let me give you a number that gives you a sense of the potential that's available from what we heard from IMF and from others. I'm going to give the numbers in a US context. So in 2007, which was a banner year for new construction, in 2007, we had 1 billion square feet of new commercial construction. If you took all of that 1 billion square feet and made it net zero, it's the same as taking 1% of the existing building stock, or the whole building stock, and reducing by 1%. You got that? So like the whole building stock reducing by 1%, like someone turning their lights off every night, or a whole bunch of people turning their lights off every night, as opposed to the massive investments that it would take to do net zero. Now, it's not either or. We should be doing both. If you're building new, you should be net zero. It's absurd if you aren't, really, in honesty. But we can do much greater than 1% for the rest of the existing building stock. We can do easily 5%, 10%, easily, without even thinking about it. It's just getting people to change their behavior, giving them tools to do things, all the things that we've been hearing about today. So we want to go beyond. ARC was born to deal with the beyond. It wasn't born to replace LEED. It was born to be a system that's more usable to connect actions that create higher quality of life. So I just want to show you what it's about, show you some of the numbers, and then I'll stop for questions. It's just an online platform. The cool thing now is that we know that we can connect with technology. As we were hearing before, we can connect in a way that we couldn't before, and it allows us to connect in a non-linear way. So you just go in and you log in, but the key thing is we're taking the core competencies that we created in LEED, which is pulling people together, organizing teams, and helping them communicate progress through a score. So we're simply saying here, our goal now is we've aligned the score with LEED, but it's based on data. So you put data in, and you can go towards LEED certification, or you can not. You can come in and be seen in the context of LEED, but it doesn't have to be LEED. So we believe that there's a power in that for a set of buildings that we think can help move a group of people in a different direction. But our goal is 0 to 100 in a lot of buildings. And it looks like this. I won't play that because I think we'd probably rather leave some time for questions. And you've been very patient. I know it's been a long day, a long conference. So it's a performance score of 0 to 100 in 5 categories. The categories are based on LEED: energy, water, waste, transportation, and human experience, because we believe it has to be holistic. So we want buildings to understand that, but we also have a 0 to 100 score in each category. So this 0 to 100 energy score is a global score. We're now in 120 countries, and we have a global score based on carbon emissions of 0 to 100. We also have a water score of 0 to 100. So you can come in and use the system and just score yourself based on energy, water, waste, whatever, and build up. So you can come in incrementally, not having to do everything all at once. So we want to make sense out of data. The reason we're using a score is because we're all experts in the room, but when you're talking to non-experts, you don't want to have to explain what a kilowatt is. You don't want to have to explain what a grid is. You just want to explain, we improved, or we didn't improve. We're getting worse. What's going on? You want more people involved. You want a larger group. That's what we're after, right? We're after a larger group, and they can't have a larger group if we keep having a technical discussion. We have 90,000 projects in the system because every building that's in LEED Online is there. So and every project that's in LEED has free access for life to the system, so they can come in and share. We've regained a recertification market. There was a discussion about certifying to operations before. We have 800 projects now that have recertified using this system, but we're going to be asking all LEED projects to recertify, not just existing buildings projects, but every project, because we believe that that's a key function and for really addressing all the issues we need to address, but not having to do it with documentation, doing it with data. Send in your data, put your data in the system, and you'll score. So it's about connections, actions, quality of life. It's nonlinear. We're doing we're doing a test on products, but it already addresses space, buildings, campuses, communities, and cities. So we're scoring cities. The idea is that we're focusing on results and not prescriptive. Not a prescriptive approach. So this approach on the left is how we write LEED credits today. We tell, and that you can see that's very good for how you get a project team to organize with each other. It's not a bad thing. It's like if you have a busload of tourists, you want to tell them that thing on the left. But if you want to incentivize innovation, you want to give them the opportunity to do the one on the right. So ARC is about the one on the right, and it's using data as documentation. Data can expand exponentially from space out to cities. And we can integrate, of course. I mean, I'm kind of saying the obvious because you've seen all these different things already in the conference, but integration is the cool thing you can do in software that you can't do. If I try to get a group of committees to align credit requirements in LEED Core and Shell with any other system, forget it. It'll never happen. But you can integrate the outcomes of each of those systems easily and track it with data. Now, this I just want to show because this is one of my favorite. It's a bad version of the slide, but this says building functions. This is this idea of nested subsystems and thinking of the world as a group of related opportunities. So the one in the middle is building functions, then building envelope, then site, watershed, community, region, planet, and universe. And what you should do is write this down in your office, and every time you make a decision, try to include each of a deeper layer of each of those. So if you're dealing with building functions, also include building envelope. If you're dealing with building functions and you also include watershed and region and planet, you're going to make a better decision. And this is how we think about how the city as nature integrates back with nature from artificial systems. And everything we do, what we're after, is about putting whole systems back together. Let's just think of the building and the city as an organism for a moment. The fluids, waste, electrical, envelope, structure, and ventilation. So fluids are the circulatory system, waste, digestive system, electrical and nervous system, envelope, the muscular system, structure, the skeletal system, and ventilation, lungs, etc. Now, imagine if you put ventilation out to bid separately from putting fluids out to bid, what's going to happen? You're going to get an oversized ventilation bid. The incentive will be to make the ventilation system as big as possible, and it will completely overpower the fluids. So you'll have tons of oxygen flowing in, and the body won't know how to deal with it. We know from building LEED buildings over and over that you can do construction, first cost construction for a new building with no additional costs if you properly size the systems to the envelope. So what we've done with LEED that's been highly successful is have a discussion between the mechanical engineer and the architect early on. Didn't used to happen. Now it does. Hopefully it does a lot more. We need to see a lot more of that happening. That's where you save costs. And then you want to put this all together back into a single organism. The building, the city, the place as an organism. And it can be put together in all kinds of different ways. So let me just show you really quickly what some of the numbers are looking like with ARC, just to give you a sense of how it's going. We launched it in December of 2016. We have 476 million square feet, 1,223 projects. Most of these are LEED projects that are coming in, but a small percentage, about 6% of those are people that we wouldn't have talked with before, and that's what really heartens me. We have school districts coming in. That's what really excites me. People that never would have done LEED before because they wouldn't have thought about it. But they can share data. We've got a LEED for Communities and LEED for Cities program. We have 222 square miles. It's really 6 projects, but it's a start since December. We have a LEED for Transit system. So Delhi Metro now is doing all of its transit stations. Shanghai Metro is doing all of its transit stations. And our next step is to do the transit lines. This is the cool thing you can do with data and scoring. We'll just take the transit systems and then start adding the energy and put it through our scoring system, add all the energy for the whole line, and we can do an energy score for the entire line. We've got our first airport, Delhi Airport, our first project in China, Parkview Green, our first sporting venue, Twins Park, first convention center, university, school, hospital, hotel, a lot of firsts, which is exciting. We don't have the first in Panama yet. We have a first in Costa Rica, so yes, exactly. Key users, there are a lot of portfolios that are using it. We built a portfolio function so you can do analysis on your whole portfolio. We're focused on getting whole portfolios, especially ones that are financed by green bonds in Europe, because they have to certify their entire portfolio. So some LEED projects, some non-LEED projects, but get them to lift up the non-LEED projects. This is what it looks like for a school district. To me, this is very exciting because the school district came in, we said you can use the platform for free, just share your data, and now they can look. They don't have a building manager, but they have people that are in charge of energy, but they can look at the score in a very simple place and say good and bad. Like, what the heck is going on with Irving Middle School? Why is it 38? Or how about Scott Middle School? Why is it 36? When we also, I mean, they may know, but they may not know. And this will give them a place to know where to focus. This is projects using ARC today, so it gives you a sense of sort of the global nature of what's happened since December 1st. So, in conclusion, tools, I don't know how many of you have a wood shop or make things. Tools are simply tools. You should never let a tool get in the way of doing something good. But tools can help us gather people to head in the same direction in order to create change. We can only find that belief. We always have to start with what you believe. If you believe we can make the world a better place, you'll only find that inside. So that's where you start. And take that to as many people as you possibly know. And thank you. It's been a great honor to be here.
I was thinking about this excellent presentation, and to my mind, I was thinking about somehow it comes to be that sometimes you work on regulation as a way to push the ball forward rather than voluntary programs or going after the leaders or the market movers. What is your appreciation of which one works better?
I don't know if you all follow sort of the tenets of regeneration. It's about healing and helping. It's what nature does. So what we want to be doing is always look to nature, and nature always tries to expand capacity, and it knows that every piece has its place. So when we talk about competitive programs, the fellow that wrote the book Originals, he calls that the narcissism of small differences. There's no competition. There's only expanding capacity. So it's essential to change regulation. It's essential to find ways to change financing. It's essential to have the top of the market do things. It's essential to help people find that they can be part of a world that they belong in.
Hello. Great hearing you speak. And what's the policy from the USGBC towards educational institutions on the pricing of using this tool, which you don't like it to be kind of called a tool, but is there any policy on how to treat this mostly in Latin America?
So right now, the pricing for the tool is, we're thinking of it this way, because it's still early days. So all 9 of the school districts that are in there, we gave it to them for free if they would share their data. So we're trying to get users now and trying to get feedback from people that are helping us understand. So it's a good time to talk to us. So what we want to know is that people will use it. So the other answer to that is I'm sorry, 2 answers. So one answer is it's $1,200 for the tool for 5-year use if you aren't the lead project. So if you want to come in and just share your data and see how close I am, once you get to a score of 40, you can submit to certification. So, but if you can't get there, so that's a pretty low cost for that. But at the same time, we give portfolio pricing. So a university would just love to talk and figure out, would you really use it? If you would like you to be in it. So, we'll talk.
Hi, good afternoon. Excellent presentation. I have been doing some research on ARC lately, and there was one question I still have in my mind, which is, I know the minimum score is 40, but as you show, there was some projects there that were a little bit below 40. What happens to those projects if they were already certified, or if this was their first, or if it was like some of their recertification after a year, 2 years, or 3 years? Will they lose their certification at that point, or what happens to them?
Yeah, so do you all get that question? Like, if you're recertifying and you don't meet the mark, do you lose your original certification? No. We've gone through this for many years. We will never take plaques off of walls. But our goal is to make the date on the plaque more important. So just like, what are the restaurant certifications here in Panama? Like, is it Zagat's, Michelin? La Gusta? Degusta? So do they put dates? Usually anyone that's reviewing like a restaurant puts a date, and if it's like from 1995, you don't want to go in there. If they're putting on their door like 1995, you know it's out of date. We want the market to be seen that lead projects stay up to date by actually taking care of their performance.
Thank you very much, Scott. Again, it's just a pleasure to be in a presentation that you do. My question is, I remember in one of your presentations in Greenville last year, you somehow explain how ARC will interact with other rating systems. We have right now in Panama, lead is as well as all in the world, the most dominant. We have Edge, as Omid is coming in, and Panama GVC are developing it right now, and we'll talk about it more later, but we are developing kind of like an operation and maintenance standard, local standard. So how these all different standards that are coming into the market are going to work around ARC?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and I would say that, GBCI has been working with particular programs, and with those programs, we can integrate quite easily because we own them. In terms of any other program, and then there's some that we, as like with Edge in part of the world, GBCI certifies to it, but it doesn't own it. It's just a certification body. But then there are other programs that we're willing, let me just give an example. We're willing to give a score to anybody, whether we integrate with the program or not. So you could be a BREEAM program, you could use ARC for your, yeah, exactly, eco protocol, right. So, I mean, what ARC will do is allow you to see how you're doing relative to a group of peers, because we have thousands of projects in our database now. We were able to create this because we've been asking for data on buildings since 2009. It's a requirement in LEED 2009 that you share energy and water data, and that allowed us to create a system with a group of artificial intelligence people in California that built the scoring mechanism. So I think we can provide that back. That's the easiest way to integrate. Otherwise, we can put it in too. It could function. There's a little app store in the section. You could have Eco Protocol in the app store and ask people to use the score to recertify, possibly. Just some thoughts. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your kind attention.